Hello YouTube. Today we're going to be doing a video on the Scandinavian opening, also called the Scandi by people that like to play it. And the Scandi itself, it's absolutely not a bad opening. Actually, the reason that a lot of strong players like to play the Scandi, or back when it started getting popular, back in the mid to late 90s, was when Anand played it in his World Championship match against Garry Kasparov. And what it was mainly used as back then was kind of a tool to get to like a Caro-Kann or a French-like position and avoid certain variations that were getting very popular in the Caro-Kann and in the French. So the main variation that people were trying to avoid out of, say, the Caro-Kann was like, say, e4, c6, d4, d5. People were getting kind of annoyed, and actually black was getting killed with the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann. This was starting to really take hold and become a very powerful opening. And, the running joke back then is if you wanted to play a Caro-Kann, you had to play d5 on move 2. And it's basically just to avoid this advanced variation in the Caro-Kann that was causing people an awful lot of headaches. And that's the primary reason, but then later on people also started using it as a way to play against, like, say, the certain French defense formations, like e4, e6, d4, d5, and then say knight c3, d4, knight e4. You can get to an almost identical position out of the Scandinavian by simply retreating your queen back to d8. So in these videos, mainly what I'm going to be focusing on is how white should be replying to the Scandinavian. So after knight c3, we're going to have one video. This video is going to focus on the move queen a5. We're going to have another video focus on queen d6. We're going to have another video focus on queen d8. And then finally, we're going to have a video focused exclusively on the move knight to f6. So a lot of you have watched my videos, and I've noticed that some of my videos have a lot more views than I have subscribers. So if you haven't already, take this opportunity to subscribe to my channel. I really do appreciate it. So anyways, after knight to c3, we're going to have the move queen a5, and this is going to be the move that we're going to exclusively focus on in this video. So after queen a5, we've got d4. You should immediately hit at the center. And then we're going to have the move knight f6. So the move I recommend is the move bishop c4, and then we're going to have the move bishop f5. And then the normal move here after bishop d2, and I like this move because it starts focusing energy on this misplaced queen pretty much immediately. The normal move here is c6 to create a retreat for this queen. Okay, now they don't have to play c6, but this is the normal move. Now what c6 does is it offers a transposition, a direct transposition into a line that we would normally see out of the Bronstein variation of the Caro-Kann. So that would happen after knight d5, queen d8, knight f6, gf6, and then bishop f4. And if you want to know how we get there from the Caro-Kann, it would happen after e4, c6, d4, d5, knight c3 takes, knight f6 takes, bishop c4, and then after simply bishop f5, followed by bishop f4, we have a direct transposition to the main line of the gf6 Bronstein variation of the Caro-Kann. So anyways, so going back to our main line, so we have queen a5, we have d4, knight f6, we have bishop c4, we have bishop f5, and then we have bishop d2. Now, it's not obligatory for black to play c6. They can try to play something independent. But these independent moves don't seem to work very well. So we'll start with some kind of short variations first. We could play the move knight c6 here, and that would run into the immediate knight d5, and I guess black just resigns at this point. There's actually not a good place for this queen to move to. So we can actually kind of trap the queen. So, for example, I guess queen a4, we could even play bishop b5 and notice that they can't take the bishop because we would check and we would fork, be a big family fork. We'd be forking the king, the queen, and the rook. And we would be winning everything. Now, they could take this pawn, but this isn't going to compensate them for the material that they're about to lose on c7 and, of course, on a8. So knight c6 is kind of a lemon. A move that people do try is the move queen b6, focusing energy on these two pawns. I find this move somewhat hilarious because black is threatening two pawns, neither of which he can really capture. So I've actually had several games in this queen b6 line, and they all typically end pretty badly for black. So mainly just play queen e2 and just dare them to take one of these two pawns. It's actually very surprising that the vast majority of players, they do end up taking one of these two pawns for whatever reason, and I don't know exactly why they would follow through with this, but they do end up taking one of these two pawns. So if they take on b2, I recommend rook b1, and notice that we're already threatening a lot of stuff. Like if they were to play queen a3, we could play knight b5, and they don't have a way to bring their queen back. Like they can't bring their queen back to a5 or d6 because the knight is covering both of those squares. So we're simply winning massive amounts of material there. So they're almost obligated to follow through and take another pawn and play queen c2. But notice that here the queen actually has run out of squares. The queen has nowhere to go and is basically trapped. Now it does take a few moves to trap it. We have to be a little patient, but we have a huge development lead. So we can just actually develop. We can castle really kind of calmly and then just shuffle this rook over to c1, and then they have to give us their queen. They get a rook for it, I guess, so that's something. But that's pretty much it. Their queen's going to go. And if they spend time to play a move like, say, bishop g4, we can just simply trap their queen with bishop d3, and that would be equally over. Okay, so we know that queen takes b2 is a lemon, so I guess the alternative is something like queen takes d4. I've had people try this against me. I don't understand why. So, but they've done it. They've tried it against me, and you know this is something that gets played. So after queen takes d4, I just recommend really any move. Almost any move, really. You could just attack the queen, and then you could say castle, for example. And you just have such a huge attack and a huge initiative here that it's actually really difficult to come up with exactly what black does here. So, like, I'm not exactly sure. But let's say, for example, they tried the move c6 here. Then we would continue with knight e5, just hitting f7, then e6, g4, bishop g6, and we could continue with the move, say, just the simple sacrifice, bishop takes e6, fe6, knight g6, hg6, and then queen e6 check. And black's position would be completely lost. Of course, there's other maybe ways that black can try to play this, or black can try to defend, but this is basically the gist of kind of what's going on here. White just has an enormous amount of activity for the material, and it's going to be very difficult for black to defend. So a sample variation would just be bishop e7, we bring the other rook in, we threaten mate, queen c7 to hold it, and then we just trade off the remainder of black's active pieces, something like knight e4, rook e4, and black doesn't actually have a move here. If he castles kingside, of course he gives back the material, and of course we have several pawns to the good. If he develops his knight, he would actually block his bishop, so we can't do that. And actually, castle's kingside is illegal, so we're cutting that off. It's very hard to find a move, so like queen d7, trying to trade queens, maybe. Queen takes g6 check, king d8, queen takes g7. We're attacking the rook on h8, rook e8, bishop f4, and we're ready to resign because we've got this pin, queen against king, and there's actually no way out of it. Okay. So that's an example of what happens if they take on d4, and like I said, I've had a couple of people try this, and it just doesn't turn out very well. So the alternatives, for the most part, after bishop d2, putting pressure on a5, the alternatives for the most part just aren't very good. So basically what black has to do is black has to go into this main line, and this, if you're playing against a really good Scandinavian player, this is what they want. They want it to transpose into a main line of the Qa5, but avoid basically the advanced variation of the Qa5. This is basically what they were trying to do. So knight f6, and then we have gf6, and then we have bishop to f4. And now I would say there's a couple of main lines, but the main line is probably e6. And now the main move for white is the move knight f3. This is by far and away the trickiest and the trappiest move. Now at this point, the really sophisticated players with black are going to play the move knight d7. Now the main idea behind knight d7 is they really want to transfer this knight to d5 kind of as quickly as possible to block up any attempt that white has at some cool sacrifices, especially like on the e6 square and maybe even these early pawn pushes with pawn to d5. It's actually really important that black gets an iron grip kind of on the d5 square kind of early on, otherwise he gets into trouble. Now, let's just say that black's a little less sophisticated, or maybe they don't know the theory, and they play something more that looks more mainstream. They play the move bishop d6, which I think is actually already a mistake. You would simply retreat. You would play bishop g3. And now, of course, if they exchange and you take back with the h-pawn, this exchange actually kind of favors white. We've weakened black's dark squares, and we've opened our h-file. And I really love opening my h-file in this position because I'm attacking the h7 pawn, which is a weak pawn sitting on a weak square. So it's kind of a nice pawn to attack. I might even win it. So bishop g3, and then a lot of players here will play the move queen c7, which is horrid. And then you play the move queen e2. And you're setting up tons and tons of sacrificial attacks. Actually, so many that it's actually, they might not even notice how dangerous their position really is. So if they continue, again, kind of with their eyes closed and play something like knight d7, you have knight h4, and the position for white is almost winning. So if they retreat, bishop g6, because you are threatening to just take this bishop for free, or even if they castle, you're at least threatening to triple the pawns. Bishop g6, bishop takes e6 works, and they don't have a good move here, because if they play f takes e6, when you recapture with the queen, you are double attacking this bishop on d6. And they don't have time to take advantage of this unfortunate lineup of queen and king, because you will be attacking their queen the entire time. So there, check, b4, and they have to make another queen move, so they never get an opportunity to take advantage of rook e8 before you get an opportunity to get your king out of the line of fire. Okay, so they have to avoid this. They have to avoid bishop g6, bishop e6, and of course there's a number of ways they can attempt to avoid bishop e6. So one thing that people try is they start noticing the danger and they play the move bishop to g4, and then I think it's acceptable to just kind of castle here, and then knight on b to d7, and then we simply play d5, taking advantage of this pin that we still have against the black king, and also taking advantage of the fact that black never did take control of the d5 square. So then after c takes d5, bishop takes d5, we're threatening all kinds of stuff because this rook is on an open file, and this bishop on d6 is being attacked twice as soon as this bishop on d5 moves. So black is going to be forced to play bishop takes g3, h takes g3, and then it looks like black can get out of all of his difficulties by simply castling queenside. But when black does castle queenside in this position, white has a really cool kind of tactical reply. And stop and pause the video and see if you can find it. And okay, so if you found it, the tactical reply is the move bishop takes b7 check, which is a really cool move. If they take back with the king, you have queen e4 check, picking up the bishop on g4, and of course now you've netted your pawns to the good. And if queen takes b7, you have queen c4 check, again picking up that bishop on g4. So that's our clever little tactic here, and that's why white's position is, at this point already, significantly better. So anyways, so the more sophisticated players are going to be playing the move after knight f3. They're going to be playing the move knight d7, and again, they're going to be trying to shuffle that bishop as quickly as possible. They're going to be trying to shuffle that knight as quickly as possible to the d5 square. So what white should do at this point is he should preempt that shuffle. He should play bishop b3. We're going to have to retreat this bishop anyway, so we would like to, again, at least be prepared to have some control over d5 with c4, just in case this knight goes to b6. So the game that we're following here is Najir versus Levon and Sochi in Russia in 2015, and that game continued with the move queen a5, c3, queen a6, queen d2, castles queenside, queen e3. Then black played queen d3, trying to exchange queens, and of course we don't have much of a choice. He played rook d1, and now maybe best was just to exchange queens, but it's not so clear that these endgames are going to be okay for black, considering that he does have the doubled pawns, and he does have this isolated pawn on h7. So this is another one of those situations, much like in the Caro-Kann, where you shouldn't necessarily be afraid of exchanging material and going into an endgame as white, because these endgames are, of course, not always against you. Some of these endgames are quite nice. So queen a6, and then bishop g3, and then we have knight b6, so kind of going with the plan, we're controlling that d5 square, knight h4, attacking the bishop, knight d5, good move, getting on d5 so that we're not getting crushed. So queen f3, bishop g6, and now c4, and this is the whole idea of the early bishop retreat. Bishop b4 check, king f1, white doesn't have a choice at that point. Bishop back to e7, king g1, and we're going to castle by hand. So we're going to play h3, king h2, rook he1, and white should enjoy some sort of slight advantage. This also breaks the pin, so now we're threatening to actually take the knight, which we weren't a move ago. So knight c7, h3, we follow through with our castle by hand strategy. We bring the rook to e1, and white should enjoy a slight edge here, and of course white did. And white went on to win in Niger versus Levon and Sochi in 2015. So briefly, I'll just show you the finish of that game. He actually exchanged into an endgame. He simplified in the middle of the board with his pawns, and he got some good pressure with his two bishops. So he's got a bishop on a4, a bishop on g3, and it was black found this very difficult to meet, very difficult to deal with. So he was able to win the exchange, and then he was able to win the endgame and exchange up, which was a lot of effort, actually. These endgames actually, an exchange up isn't, an exchange up, especially when black has the extra pawn, these are some of the hardest endgames to win. It takes a lot of technique, and sometimes they're not even winnable. You have to be very, very good at utilizing your king and your rook. But as the rook gets into the endgame and as the rook has more and more open files, it becomes more of that 5-point piece that we all love. So once he got into the pure endgame, white probably had a pretty large advantage in that case. So anyways, that's your basic overview for the move Queen a5. So I'm planning 3 more videos on the Scandi and how to play against it as white. So in the next 3 videos, I'll be covering Queen d6, Queen d8, and of course I'll be covering not capturing the pawn right away with the queen at all, but instead playing knight f6. And again, if you haven't already, go ahead and please like this video and subscribe, and it'll help me a lot in keeping more of these videos coming. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you learned something new about chess.